Okay, let's go and discuss about the materials in 3D.js. As we can further go, we can find it in documentations, in material sections. You can see the examples of different materials. Let's check the materials. Here is the documentation, the properties. And we are going to actually cover some of these properties and some of these materials. Okay. So this section you can actually apply these changes online. As you can see here in the mesh basic materials, there are some properties that are not affected in the mesh basic materials, for example, ambient light. However, if you make the object transparent, you can actually change the opacity. So I just comment out those parts that we are not going to use in these sections, but however, we can use it later. And as a matter of the fact, in previous section, we use the mesh standard materials as a public materials for all objects that we are going to use in our scene. And now let's actually check different materials. I just changed the name of the mesh to mesh basic materials and re-render our subject. As you can see here, the mesh basic materials are not affected by shadows, by light. It's just only have the colors, and you cannot actually do some sophisticated task by using mesh basic materials. And it's sometimes used as a light in some games. For example, if you want to have a frame that make it more, for example, more sophisticated in your game, you can use the mesh basic materials, but as I said, is not affected by shadows or any reflection of the lights. So in that part, for example, we use the mesh standard materials. Let me actually find the codes. Just search it. Yeah, mesh standard materials. As you can see in our actually environment, we can see the shadows, and however, when we convert it to mesh basic materials, we actually cannot see the shadows. And as you can see here, there are multiple properties. For example, some textures that we are going to cover in this video. And one of the importance are wireframe, and the type of the wireframe is Boolean. So let's apply the wireframe material.wireframe. If we actually assign the true to the wireframe, we can see the changes. And as we discussed in previous sections, the concept of vertex and the points and the polygon can be actually insightful in this example. As you can see here, only the vertex can be actually seen here, and you can see that in Three.js, actually each plate are triangular, and it's used actually in VR technology based models, and you can use it actually in your program and in your game. And Now we are going to actually switch in other materials and see the different properties. For example, in mesh depth materials, again, the ambient light is not affected in the materials that use the mesh depth materials. And again, we can actually apply the transparent option. We can change the opacity, and let's actually see that I can find it in documentation. Transparent, or maybe I just I can write it the opacity, and let's see opacity. Oh, okay, it is not actually mentioned in documentation. However, we can actually do it by ourselves. Material dot opacity, for example, set it to 0.5. As we can see, actually, let's actually comment out the material wireframe. And as you can see here, is not acceptable because our object is not transparent. And if we make our object, we make our mesh transparent, as you can see, the opacity is actually can be shown like this. And if we again enable the wireframe, we can see the changes. However, it's not much that actually seeable, but however, you can see the difference when we make the object transparent and change the opacity. And basically the opacity values is between 0s and 1. And if you make it greater than 1, it's just basically 1. And 1 is represented actually 100% opacity. And that's it. In next stage, we are going to actually cover the Mesh-Lambert materials. The Mesh-Lambert materials use the Lambertian model for calculating their actually reflections. Basically, it would not show the shiny surfaces in sophisticated ways, so it's only actually used to simulate some surfaces such as a wood, a stone. And as the live demo in here, you can see there are different properties that we can make them enable or disable. And in mmap, you can see actually there are different types that predefined in the actually backend of this demo. And as you can see here, there are actually multiplied type of things that you can apply by yourself. Typically is not that usable in some cases, but however, we can actually using in some basic games that they are not going to actually use the reflections in materials. And as I said, it can simulate some surfaces such as a wood, a stone. And as the document goes, you can see actually different properties and apply it by yourself. Typically, personally, I wouldn't use the Mesh-Lambert material in my project. And let's go to the next stage. The next material that we are going to cover is Mesh Matcap materials, but before actually we apply it in our environment, I just need to explain it, the Matcap material for you. And as we can see in the Googles, the Matcap is actually typically is a textures that are not actually reflected any shadow, any light. However, the texture by itself, it's actually pre-calculated by the creator of that matcap materials. For example, as you can see here, there is a reflections in here, but it is not the processed by actually GPU, your graphic cards. It's just actually predefined, and as you can see, as the result, we are thinking that there is a shadow, there is a reflection on that specific part. For example, in mesh standard materials, when we actually apply the ambient light, it's actually the processor, the GPU will calculate the reflection and the shadows of these changes and show that changes to the user of that environment. So in mesh on standard materials, it will calculated by the processor, by the GPU, by the graphic cards, and it will actually cost a lot, and it's enormous processing path, and that it need to process by the GPU. However, in MATCAP is actually it's calculated, and it's actually encode in that material. For example, as you can see here, in this example, you see the reflection of the environment in these actually circular ball gold, but however, it's not actually typically it's not that reflection of that specific environment. It's just predefined. For example, if you add these textures to your environment, you can see the same reflections, and as a result, it will not actually reflect your environment reflections. And as a matter of the fact, the processing system, the processing power will actually save. And as you can see here, there are different actually examples that you can see on internet. And it is not actually these reflections. Again, this reflection is not the environment reflections. And typically, let's get back to the mesh matcap materials. As you can see here, there is actually reflections in here, but however, it's pre-calculated by the texture creator. As you can see here, this is the materials that you can find it in Three.js masters directory. And this is the address, examples, textures, matcap, and it is just the same. And let's see the changes. It will not affected by any light, any shadows, as I mentioned. And the opacity and transparency, it will be affected. And so on, the color changes will be applied too. However, it's not actually pre-calculated this color. It's just combining the color layer with the texture layer. And as you can see here, the texture is not actually changes. They are just adding together. And technically, you have the basic textures, the basic matcap, and just append the color to it. And yeah, that's it. The next model that we are going to cover actually is mesh funk materials. It's typically a next version of Lambertian materials. that actually use Billion Phong model for calculating the reflections, and unlike the Lambertian model that cannot actually simulate the shiny surface, the mesh Phong materials actually can simulate the shiny surface, and it's one of the actually most advanced materials in in materials, and it will be affected by different lights. And as you can see here, the opacity, the transparency, and there is a properties is shyness, which will, as you can see here, it will simulate the shiny, the percentage of shiny that are object. And there's a property named flat shading, and let's apply it and see it in our code. I just changed the material to mesh Phong materials, and make the flat shading to true. And if we actually reload our page, it's typically when the flat shading is false, it will make the curve, it will create a artificial curve between different vertex. So we are not enabled to see that vertex. Typically we are not able to see that vertex clearly. As we make these property, set it to true, you can see the actually difference between each vertex. And as you can see, we can actually specify between different segments. And you can see in cube is not actually distinguishable, but however in some cases we can use flat shading. You can use it in your materials. And another things that we are going to actually cover in mesh Phongs is, let's actually disable the flat shading. And the other properties that we can actually make it in our materials is emissive, which is make the object itself be the source of the light. If for example, if you have a light that are going to actually make the environment lighter, the emissive properties, it will do the same, but however that particular material will be the source of the light. And you can see the changes here. And yeah, that's it. That's the most important part of the mesh Phong materials.